It's time for The Story Behind the Person, featuring lively, in-depth conversation with compelling guests from our community. And here is our host, Jonathan Van Bilsen.
Hello and welcome to our show. Many of you know my next guest today. She's been the force behind community living in Durham Region, as well as her current role as the Executive Director for the Oak Ridges Hospice. We'll find out the story behind this amazing person right after these messages.
Not all Canadians have the time or desire to manage their finances. That's where we come in, helping Canadian families plan for a secure, happy, and successful future. Visit our website at www.teamfg.ca.
At Voss, your independent grocer, it's all about hometown living and shopping. Owned and operated by Terry and Christine Voss, their newly renovated Port Perry store carries many local items to support our town and its residents.
Welcome back. As I mentioned, my guest today is Christine Voss. She's the Executive Director for the Oak Ridges Hospice in Port Perry. Christine, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I've known you for quite a while. You've done a lot of things. I know your husband as well, and you guys also own and operate the Voss Independent Grocery Store in Port Perry.
We do.
Which is, there's not a lot of correlation between that and working for the hospice. I mean, it's totally separate. Are you very much involved in the grocery business, or do you just manage your husband?
I do have to manage him because he does get out of control. I am not as involved as I used to be.
Okay.
So my role now is mostly social media,
right,
and community events.
Right, which you guys do a lot of community events. I mean,
yes.
that could be a full-time job. I get that.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we're going to take it back in time a bit. So I thought you were actually born out in Belleville, but you mentioned you were born in the Beaches.
I was.
Which is interesting. But you did meet your husband in Peterborough.
I did.
Right. So did you move out there, or you didn't commute from the Beaches to Peterborough on a daily basis?
No, my parents moved to Peterborough in 1977, where I
Okay.
went to high school.
Ah.
And from there, I went to university.
Okay.
So I went to Trent University.
Right.
And I graduated from there with my Bachelor's of Science degree in psychology.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that.
yeah, so it was during the end of
Right.
me finishing university that I met Mr. Voss.
At Mother's Pizza.
Yes,
You're-
yes, Mother's Pizza Parlor.
That's right.
When I started working there was Mother's Pizza Parlor and Spaghetti House.
You know, and I remember that there was one in Oshawa, Mother's, that I would go to from time to time because they had the best spaghetti anywhere. They really did.
They did.
Yeah.
And when I started there, we had to wear the little outfits with the hats and
Oh, really?
the cameo.
We don't have any pictures of that. That would be kind of a neat thing to insert.
Yeah, no,
But
thank you.
They weren't they bought up by Little Caesars or Mr. Caesar or something like that?
They
Yeah.
were. They were bought out by Little Caesars.
Yeah.
He wanted to get into the restaurant in-service
Right.
business because at that point, Little Caesars was just takeout.
Oh, okay.
My understanding is they tried it for a couple of years.
Right.
It didn't work, and he went back to the takeout.
And you left there because your husband now was trying to pursue a relationship, and he tells the story that you left because you weren't allowed to work together, but I assume it was also because you were tired of him pursuing you. So,
That would be it. They actually did have a policy that employees were not allowed to date.
Right.
So, yes, I ended up going to another restaurant down the road.
right.
Yes, and I guess the rest is history.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and you guys were married shortly after that, I guess.
We were.
And so I've got down here that you were working your dream job, and then he was asked to move. So what were you doing? What was the dream job?
Yes, so we were in Belleville.
Right.
And I was working for an organization back then that was called Plainfield Community Homes.
Okay.
And I was the planner and what they called the personal outcome facilitator.
Okay. And what sort of organization was it?
It was an organization that supported children with disabilities.
Oh.
And the children grew up and became adults. So they were all in group homes. And my job was to go out to the group homes and speak with the person and their family about what their dreams and goals were.
Oh, interesting. That would be an interesting job.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
It was,
Very
I loved it.
Insightful.
I
So,
loved it.
Obviously, your psychology background came in handy. Are you analyzing me now, too, because as a psychologist?
Actually, I have for a long time, Jonathan.
Yeah, that could be a full-time job. Trust me. That's kind of a neat way to get to know the community as well. But then your husband got an offer for a store, right, for somewhere
Yes.
else.
Yes, yes.
And,
So he had been in grocery for, oh gosh, at that point, probably 10 or 15 years.
Okay.
Our oldest daughter was out at university. She was
Right.
entering second year, and our youngest daughter had just gone into grade 10.
I was going to say, you have 2 kids, right? Yeah.
I do.
And one's living in Italy and one's living in Edmonton,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
That must be a
So-
nice, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah, heck of a commute.
Yeah, so Terry was offered a job. His first store was in Oshawa,
Okay.
and it was on the corner of Town Line and King.
Okay.
And we spent many a night sitting out back with a glass of wine discussing the logistics of that.
Right,
And
right.
back then, the majority of the wives would work full time with their husbands
Okay.
in the store.
Right.
I had just landed my dream job,
Yeah.
and I couldn't see myself working in retail.
Well, considering that you went to school for something else and you were working in something else, obviously that was
Yes.
a passion that you have, and you're still in it now. So, you know,
Yes.
so it must have been a passion. So,
Yes.
So, but you did make the decision because you did move, right,
We did move,
Yeah.
and I commuted back to Belleville for a year
from Oshawa.
from Oshawa.
Wow, that's got to be what, 90 minutes?
It was, and it was a tough commute because as you're driving there in the mornings, the sun's
Yeah.
in your eyes, and when you're coming home, the
Oh my
sun's in your
gosh.
eyes again. So
Wow. And there were no trains running there then, were there?
not
There are-
as
still aren't.
frequent.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't conducive to the job
Yeah.
I was doing because I was traveling around Belleville
Yeah,
in
had
the
two-
area.
And you had 2 kids,
We had 2 kids.
which you basically didn't see.
Well, the one was off at university, and the
Right.
other one was at high school, so she
Yeah.
was pretty independent as well.
Yeah.
So I did that for about a year, and at a conference, I had the HR person from Community Living Oshawa Clarington
Okay.
come up and ask me if I was interested in working for them.
Ah, so that's how that happened. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So,
So-
I know community living. I know a little bit about it. There's also community care, and the two are totally separate, right? They're totally,
Yes.
They're not. A lot of people mistake them as the same. I know
Yes.
because of the name, I guess.
Yes.
But community living is that a national organization? Is it across Canada?
It is. So there's Community Living Canada, Community
Right.
Living Ontario,
Okay.
and you become affiliated with that
But you're like a
overseeing
standalone
body.
franchise,
Yes,
basically, right?
Yes.
And
so
I-
everyone
yeah.
is different. So I worked for the one in Oshawa,
Okay.
and I started as a supervisor and continued to do the planning piece.
All right.
And from there, I ended up working myself up to becoming the manager of operations,
Okay.
where I oversaw 22 locations
Wow, there's
and
that many.
14 supervisors.
Wow.
It's a large organization.
Yeah. Now, how many people would there have been in that organization at the time?
Oh gosh.
Like in your group, in your area?
So I ended up managing the community departments, and some of the group homes and day programs. So there was probably about 450 people
Wow.
being supported
Right.
from children up to seniors in
Really?
all different kinds of
And
capacity.
what services did you provide?
So
Or do they provide?
Community Living Oshawa Clarington provides supports and services to people with disabilities.
Okay.
So sometimes it might be in a group setting,
Right.
a group home. They have a supported independent living program where staff go
Okay.
into people's apartments and help
Okay.
them with daily living and in chores and things.
Right.
We also support families.
Okay. So it's
So-
not like so you don't look after seniors, for example. You don't drive meals to seniors and stuff like that.
No,
I see.
no,
That's
but
where
there
the
are
community-
seniors
Right.
that live in the group homes.
Okay.
But they would have to
Okay.
have met the mandate of having a developmental disability.
Right. Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have a friend whose her sister was in one of your group homes for many years, and I mean it's a great service. I assume it's government funded.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, and somewhere in there you decided that you were going to come to Port Perry, and I think that was a stressful move because you had never heard of Port Perry before, right?
It was a bit of a stressful move. Port Perry is the smallest town we've ever lived in.
Right.
And we didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
So Loblaw, our franchisor, purchased our store back from us
Okay.
and offered us the independent here
Your
in Port
Oshawa
Perry.
store they purchased.
Yes,
huh?
yes.
Okay. So that would have been around 2007, 2008, somewhere in there.
2008.
Yeah.
And yeah, we came up here in 2008.
Okay. So, I mean, we're not far from Oshawa and Port Perry, but it's still a half an hour, and if you don't know anybody, it could be the other side of the world.
exactly. And if you're traveling, I commuted for years,
Right.
and the traffic can be a little daunting.
Yeah.
So when I first started my commute, because Community Living Oshawa Clarington's main office is right south Oshawa.
Oh, okay. So it's the furthest away you could get.
Yes.
Right.
And it would take me about 35 minutes.
Right.
The last day I worked there, it took me an hour and 20 to come home.
Wow. Wow.
It changed. Oshawa's
Yeah.
grown.
Still closer in Peterborough. From,
Sure is.
Or Belleville from Oshawa. Though.
It sure is.
Yeah. So, and I can't picture it like moving to a town where you don't know anybody in a business that's brand new that you don't really have any feel for. I mean, the business itself you do, but the actual store and the people and so forth, you don't know what the competition is like, what they're doing and so forth. And here you are. So that must have been stressful. Must have been a few long nights.
It was very stressful, and the previous franchisee was very well known and had been
Right.
here for a very long time.
Right.
And people referred to the store as their last name.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, when we were in Oshawa, nobody referred to the store as Voss's. It was always
Yeah.
the Independent. So we really wanted to make a name for ourselves when we came here.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, my husband, Terry, is very passionate about family.
Right.
And he came up with the slogan, a family store with family values.
Yeah.
And that kind of resonated.
And you guys have, I mean, you've really immersed yourself in the community without question. There's nothing that happens from a charitable perspective that your name is not associated with. I mean, I know you guys do, and I know it's sort of like he runs the store, but I know you're a big influence and a big mover, because all the events you're at.
Absolutely.
And, I know the Canada Day where you do the cupcake flag, which is 1,400 cupcakes, which when I first heard about that, and we're talking a few number of years ago, I just assumed that somebody send in 1,400 cupcakes and you guys put them out, but you actually bake them, you ice them, you decorate them, and those are some long nights. And I don't know if a lot of people really do appreciate everything that gets done. But I do know that if you guys, and I know you'll never retire because people won't let you, but if you ever do, it'll be a massive void in this city.
Terry and I have always believed in giving back to our community. We feel very fortunate with what we've been able to do, and we've always volunteered, and our children volunteered as well.
Right.
So we always did that as a family. So it was nothing for us to get involved here in Port Perry.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your current position with the hospice, which is obviously a very, very worthwhile and interesting element of the community. So sit tight. We'll be back right after these messages.
Pet Value has a fleet of services to help you and your pet live their very best lives. Visit Pet Value in Port Perry to discover a world of expertise, friendly staff, and everything you need for your pets. Pet Value, your pet, your store.
Top care with top stylists. Book your next hair appointment with Port Perry's award-winning hair salon, Rosario Greco Styles. The hair experience you deserve. Book today. Call 905-985-0099.
At PP Print and Digital Services, we're excited to announce the expansion of our services to include comprehensive point-of-sale display solutions. Let us help you create a compelling in-store presence and ensure your products reach your customers effectively.
Welcome back. My guest today is Christine Voss, the Executive Director of the Oak Ridges Hospice. Christine, welcome back.
Thank you.
Very interesting story about your life up to this point. The community living element was interesting. The grocery business is interesting. You've certainly done a lot of things, but have always sort of stuck down to what you really want to do, which is working with people who are less fortunate. Is that a good way to put it?
Yes.
Yes. So you're at community living, and I imagine that many people, 400 some odd people, in an environment that's government controlled, government funded, it must be quite stressful to be in the position. Plus you have to drive 45 minutes to get there, if not longer. So how did you end up going to the Oak Ridges Hospice?
That's an interesting question. I have a very dear friend who let me know they were looking for an executive director.
Okay.
And at first I said, thank you so much, but I don't think I'm ready for that. I was gearing up, or maybe gearing down
Yep.
towards retirement.
Really?
And I had a particularly difficult day. And I reached out to her and asked her to make an introduction.
Interesting.
And she introduced me to one of the board members who I knew but didn't know well.
Okay.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
So now I'm only 3 minutes from work.
Wow. And that could work against you too. Working in the same town that you live in could be a problem too, right?
You're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
but,
We were quite excited when we ended up doing this. I said to friends, we can get together for lunch. We can, meet for a beverage, which we have never done.
Because there's no time.
No, there's no time.
Yeah, I get that. It's the 45 minutes that you would drive before, now you spend at work longer.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the hospice. We did have a guest on our show, Steve Russell, last year, and gave us a little bit of information about it. How long has it been running now? 3 years? 4 years?
It opened in April of 2021.
21. So it's been 4 years roughly. 3 years. 3 years. I can do math. And it's designed for an end of life of a person, right? That's what it's for. I mean, I've toured the facility. It's a spectacular facility. It's beautiful. It's very, very, very well done. And you have room for, is it 10 beds, but you're using 8, or are you using?
We are funded for 10 beds.
Right.
We are permanently funded for 8 beds with the additional 2 beds as temporary funding.
Right.
Fingers crossed they make that permanent.
Okay.
Yes, so we have 10 beds, beautifully appointed care suites.
Yeah, I've seen them. I mean, they've got place for relatives and that to spend, to sleep there, to live there, sort of thing. Yeah, it's spectacular. I always think of those things as somewhat depressing because you're at the end of your life, kind of thing. But I understand that that's not really the case. It's not. It's a good quality, right?
Absolutely, and it's funny when people find out that I do work there. Most often the first thing they say is, oh, that's got to be a really sad place to work. And it's just the opposite.
It is, isn't
I
it?
always talk about how it's filled with life and love.
Yeah.
And people are celebrating.
Yeah.
Right? So when people come to us, many times they've been at home and their loved one is caring for them.
Right.
And they may not be experienced in that care.
Right.
And as people end up needing more support, it becomes harder for a family member to do that.
Yeah.
It could be round the clock, and there could be family burnout happening.
Yeah.
So we always say when people come in, we welcome them in, and we say to family members, let us do the care, you can be family.
Yeah, that's nice. It's a nice way of putting it. I imagine, too, that a lot of people are elderly, and to have when you're elderly, to have a spouse who's the same age as that person looking after it is very difficult. It's one thing if it's like a 30-year-old, but if you're like 75 or 85 years old trying to look after someone, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yes, and a lot of times it would be a sibling.
Yeah.
Or sorry, their child, their daughter, or their son, and not a lot of people are experienced in that.
I don't think anybody
personal
is.
care.
Unless you're trained for it, I don't think anybody is.
It's an eye opener at times, and
absolutely.
a lot of times people can't manage a person's pain when they're at home.
Yeah.
And they come into the hospice.
Yeah.
So
how does one get into the hospice? Like, does the family apply? Does your physician choose, or?
So usually what happens is a family member or the hospital will let the family know maybe hospice is a better option.
Right.
There is an admission criteria that we have that they have to follow, and the physician makes the referral.
Okay.
Because a lot of times it has to be the physician, one of our palliative physicians, take over.
Okay.
So it's a physician-to-physician transfer.
Right, okay. And is it only for people of Port Perry?
It's not.
It's not, eh?
It's anybody in Durham. We are still the only residential hospice.
I was going to ask, are there more hospices in Durham, or they're building one or something, aren't they, somewhere?
They are.
Yeah.
Hospice care has been around for years. People were able to receive hospice care in their homes.
Okay.
So for residential hospice, we're the first one to open. Marigold Hospice, which is being built in Clarington.
Okay.
They are building right now.
Right.
And Whitby is just starting to build.
Okay.
So we will have 3 in the area.
So obviously these are worthwhile facilities, or they wouldn't be adding to them.
Absolutely. The rule of thumb is for every 100,000 people you have in a population, you should have a 10-bed hospice.
Okay, interesting.
So if you look at our population, we're not going to have adequate
so
hospices.
You draw, are you always full? Are you at capacity?
Full is a relative term.
Like are your 8 beds, do you have a waiting list? Or well, I guess you don't really have a waiting list.
We don't have a waiting list.
Yeah.
We call it a bed queue.
Okay.
At any time, we can have 50 people on that bed queue.
Okay.
And whoever is in most need will be the person to come in.
And is there, what's the average stay for people? Does it really vary, or can you?
We've had people stay as little as a few hours.
Really?
Right up to a few months.
Okay. Okay. So once they've been approved to be there and they move in, they stay there until the end of their life. You don't throw them out.
No, we don't.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, if somebody's going to be there for like 6-7 months, but then that's a bad call to begin with, right?
Well, it's not an exact science.
Yeah, exactly. But
right?
that's not the purpose either.
No, it's not. It's not. So when people are coming in the hospice, what you'll find a lot of times is they may rally and get better for a bit, because they're getting regular medication and regular food.
Of course.
But the average stay, the longest stay people should be with us is 2 months.
Okay. All right. Interesting. I was talking to a couple of the docs in Port Perry, and especially the brand new ones, they have to spend time at the hospice.
They do.
That's part of their mandate.
They do.
Which is interesting.
It's an amazing relationship that we have with the medical associates of Port Perry, that when new docs come in, there's certain expectations, and one of them is to be a palliative physician at Oak Ridges.
It's great. Now, there's also some palliative care that takes place in the hospital itself, right?
There is.
Is that a stepping stone, or is that a competitor to you?
Well, it's a support to us. We don't like to talk about competition because we're all here to help people. But there are a couple of palliative beds here in Port Perry. Oshawa, I believe, has 20 now.
Oh, really?
And people sometimes the doctors recommend for them to go into a hospital for their end of life.
Right.
But as you know, hospitals can be very loud. And they're not as comfortable. Families can ask to come to Oak Ridges, or the doctor or a social worker may recommend it. And we have a very quiet, home-like setting with staff around the clock. And people can come and spend their last days with us.
Yeah, it is a great facility. I can't say enough about it. Maybe we'll put a few pictures on the screen of the facility. So are you funded by the Ministry of Health?
We are. We're funded about 48% by the Ministry of Health. So that can be a challenge. So we're doing a lot of fundraising. I'm always out in the community talking to people.
And this is operational money we're talking about? Like the building is paid for, right? By the fundraising that was done to get it to where it is.
Yes.
And the equipment and everything is all taken care of. So now the operation, which is the staffing and the supplies and all that.
Yes.
So you're getting 50% from the government, basically. The other 50% is up to you to get?
Yes.
So I won't ask what that number is, but I can imagine it's quite high.
It is.
So you have a lot of fundraising. So I guess the big part of your job is raising money one way or another.
It is.
And managing some people in between.
Yes.
And so what sort of events do you do? I know you do a run, a walk.
We do. We do a hike for hospice.
Right.
And we do that annually, usually the first Sunday in June.
Okay.
That's one of our big fundraisers.
Right. How long is that walk?
Oh, gosh. I think it's maybe a couple of kilometers.
Okay.
It's a fun walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an oxymoron. Walking and fun is not doesn't go in the same sentence in my book. But and then you also have the was it a Chase the Ace or?
It is. It's a relatively new one that we started last year, and it's you're looking for the Ace, so you get a ticket number, and if you catch the Ace, you get 50% of the progressive jackpot.
Okay, so it's like a glorified 50-50 draw.
It is.
Yeah, interesting.
Yes.
First time I heard about it was in Nova Scotia. A lady had won an enormous amount of money, and she had a big fight with her son because they had split it or something, and it became a court case. And that's the first time I heard about it.
Yes.
It's interesting. So, what other sort of things are in the works for fundraising? Like, what do you do? Do you just beg people for money, more or less?
Well, sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who have money and who like to give money away, and it's a pie, and you need a segment of it, right? So
yes.
I guess there's a lot of schmoozing that you have to do.
We find a lot of the money that we are able to receive is from donors, from people that have used our services.
Okay.
They're so appreciative. They do provide us some money from that. We also do a couple of other smaller fundraisers. McMurtry Law does their...
the Amazing Race thing?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
They've done it now for 5 years.
Really?
And that's been an an amazing fundraiser.
Excellent.
Yeah, we do. Recently, we did a hockey night in Port Perry where you could
Right.
pay to play some hockey players, and that
with
was very
Eric
successful.
Lindros was there, and
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
We were so excited to have Geraldine Heaney.
Right.
So she's amazing.
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, that's great.
So we do different things that maybe people haven't thought of doing before.
Yeah, and coming up with them is a challenge on its own. And
Yes.
I'm sure you have a good staff that works with you to
Yes.
do this. And you're enjoying it?
I am enjoying it.
Good, even though you're working in the town that you live in. And,
You know what? I never thought I'd like it, but
Yeah.
I love it. Port Perry's an amazing town.
It
They're
is- it
very
is that.
supportive, and we are very fortunate to have a business and also
Right.
to work there.
And you report to the board of directors, I assume,
I
right,
do.
which is made up of different people from the community,
Yes.
some physicians and stuff like that.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
good. It's wonderful. We our time's come to an end.
Oh,
Yeah, it went very quickly.
it did.
Very interesting. I've learned a lot, actually, and I enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being part of it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Indeed, indeed. And thank you all for watching. Please join us every month right here for The Story Behind a Person.